Hi, folks. So, this is the third video of the series where I'm trying to break down the concepts that I'm reading from this book called as Building Microservices. It's by Sam Newman. And yeah, in this video, we are trying to go through some of the key concepts that is there in domain-driven design. And I already have made a video, which is like the second video in this series that explains why behind the domain-driven design and a law called as Conway's law, which which tries to map a relationship in between the organizational structure and the technical structure that that organization produces. So if you haven't seen that video, I would request you to go watch that video first, the second one in this playlist, and then come over to this video so that you will be able to better relate with what I'm trying to explain. Now, yeah, let's get straight to the concepts. Some of the concept in DDD field, these are domain, entity, value object, aggregates, ubiquitous language, and bounded context. Now, I know these sounded a lot, but like it will probably get a lot clearer when we try to see this by example. So let's say we are trying to discuss about e-commerce website, right? What's the first name that comes in your mind? We are going to discuss about what is the meaning of domain in DDD. Uh, it's domain in DDD. So let's say the very first e-commerce that comes in your mind, or at least in my mind, is Amazon, right? So Amazon and what is the problem in which space they are trying to solve a problem in, right? So they are trying to solve the problem in e-commerce space, right? Or online retail space. So they are trying to solve in online retail. So online retail becomes the domain, right? They're trying to solve in e-commerce space. Similarly, let's take an example of online payment apps. So, for example, Phone Pay, Google Pay, Paytm, and all of these apps, right? What's the business space that they are trying to solve the problem in? Fintech, right? So, fintech becomes another domain. So, let's say in case of Phone Pay, the domain is fintech, right? So now you might have a clear idea about what domain is. Domain is the field in which a particular company is trying to build a product and solve a problem, right? It could be a problem which is already solved by some of the companies, or there might be some edge case that that particular company is trying to solve, but you have got an overall idea about what domain is, right? Now, let's come over to the second point. It's a ubiquitous language. So, ubiquitous language, right? So, why is there a need? It ubiquitous language, it defines a common language or a common vocabulary for a specific object to be used throughout all the teams. So, for example, let's say you have different teams, engineering teams, sales teams, marketing team, product designers, and everyone involved, right? So, everyone should be addressing one object by a common name and not by other names. So, for example, let's say in case of in case of Amazon, let's say there is a product. Let's say there is a book. That's a product, right? Engineering team should also call that book, it should categorize as product, and even sales team should also call that as product. So, for example, what I'm trying to say is this book should be called as a product by all the teams, right? Be it engineering, be it sales. So, engineering team should also call this that as a product. Uh, Sales team should be also calling that as a product, and marketing team as well, right? No one should address that book as an item. Like, it is an item for sure, but the vocab that should be used while communicating it should be a product. Similarly, so let's say this was a book. Taking another example, there is a user who is registered in our system, right? So, like, it should be called as, for example, let's say a customer, right? By every team. No one should call it as a viewer or a user or a person. Everyone within every documentation, be it internal or external, be it the code that the engineers are working on, every object should be called or should be referred by one common lingo or common vocab by all the organization. A user should be called as a customer, and I like a product. It should not be addressed by any other word. It should not be called as item. It should not be called as an object or anything. And this has to be consistent across all the teams. The problem that it tries to solve is it kind of it's very easy for different teams while they talk to each other. They won't be confused that okay, when they mean a product, they are addressing to the same thing. All of the different people in the room will understand that okay, it's a product, and what are the different states that it can have, right? There is a clear understanding of what a product is within the same organization. Also, will be a very clear understanding of what a customer is within the same organization and across the different teams. So it's like ubiquitous language in a nutshell is a way to bring all the teams on a similar platform in how they look up to a certain object or like how they address a certain object. So that becomes ubiquitous language. Let's try to see what are the other things. Entity and value objects and all of that, right? So now if you see, uh, let's go and try to explain entity. Okay, now think of entity as something that exists within a system with like something unique, like with a uniqueness, and it will always have an identifier associated with it. So let me give a very like common example. You are an entity, like the person you who is right now watching the video is an entity. Okay, you are a person, but you have a very distinct set of characteristics. You have a distinct name. Sorry. So even let's say if some other person with same name comes up, you two are going to be totally different, right? So what I'm trying to say here is an entity is identified by an like a unique uh, characteristics, or let's say we call it here as an identifier. So for example, a book, right? Uh, it is an entity. Every book will be a different, like it has to be a different entity within an organization, within a system. So let's say this book can have ID. This is going to be unique. Name of the book, author, and let's say date when it was published. So date of publish. So and no two books will have all these four attributes as same. Let's say worst case, two books can be let's say two books have same name uh, and a same date of publishment, but they they might have different authors, right? And I'm pretty sure that it might not be possible to uh, actually produce the same book name. They might have some copyright law or something. But what I'm trying to say is that each book can be identified uniquely by this own ID, right? Similar for in case of a person or a customer, let's say, let's stick to our ubiquitous language, customer. So in case of our customer, each customer is unique, right? So customer will have a customer ID, they will have a name, they will have an address and a phone number, right? So in a nutshell, we can say that entity is a uniquely identified object that lives within the system, right? Now let's head over to value objects, right? What are value objects? You can think of value objects to be very like kind of similar with entity. Only difference is they don't have identifier, like they are not unique. Okay. So think of it like, let's say in case of address, right? In case of customer, customers have address. Uh, So address can have multiple different, what do you call it? Attributes. So let's say it will have flat number, right? Street number, um, road and area, and like the pin code and stuff followed, like followed by pin code and stuff, right? So, but it's not a unique address, right? Like, I mean, two customers from the same address, like literally the same address, can order something, right? But those customer entities are going to be different. Like, let's say if me and my friend, we both live in the same address, but we register on, let's say, Amazon.com, we are going to be two separate entities and we both will share the same address, right? So address can be shared across like multiple entities, right? If let's say I change my address or if my friend changes the address, they will remain the same customer with a different address. Their customer ID is not going to change. Their customer, this CID that is here, it will remain the same, but the address is going to change, right? And it's not it's not unique to that customer, right? As we discussed before, it can be shared. This can be common for multiple customers. So th that is value object, right? So value objects are the objects that exist within our organization without any identifier, right? We are more interested in the value rather than the uniqueness of it in this case, right? So let's move on to a different concept now. We discussed value objects. We need to discuss about aggregate and bounded contexts now. Okay, so there we go for aggregates. Okay, so think of aggregates as um the items or like aggregates mostly consists of entities and their dependent like entities might like multiple entities might be dependent on each other, but aggregate what it does is they bring all of them together. So let's say in case of the e-commerce website itself, order can be an aggregate, right? When let's say you have added some of the items in cart and you are trying to now order this, it becomes an order aggregate which consists of multiple entities, right? So it can have a product entity, like, or let's say if this is an order aggregate, it will have an aggregate root. What this is, uh, like we'll come to the aggregate root. Let's try to understand what, like the structure of how aggregate and the entities can have, uh, like the relationship between aggregate and entities. So let's say this is an order aggregate, right? And it has order entity, right? And what this, so this is the root entity. right? Aggregate root. This order can have multiple products, right? It will have an address attribute also, right? Where this order is going to be shipped to. So it will have address. It will have the person's or the customer's phone number, like, or the detail of, let's say, the customer, right, who is trying to order this. Okay. And products, this may or may not have, like, a particular order may have one or more than one products, right? So it will be like a list of products, right? I'm using the same term again and again to try not to deviate from our own learning, like the ubiquitous language. I'm not using items in terms of instead of products and products instead of items. I'm trying to keep it same. So this order entity is the aggregate root, right? So the functionality that this order aggregate is going to expose, if you want to add any product in this order, you have to go via that order aggregate. You cannot just directly, like, any functionality in a particular aggregate cannot touch directly their attributes. What I mean to say is, in case of code, if I try to explain, let's say if O is an object of order aggregate, so let's say order O, O is the object. So if you want to add uh, product, like a product in the array of the products, you'll have to go like O dot add product and then give the product name. Oh, I'm sorry, it is not getting visible. I'll write it here. So in this case, if it's an order O, if you want to add something in the order, we are going to go like O dot add product, right? And the product description over, like the product object over here. We cannot directly go and be like, hey, O dot, let's say O dot products is equal to, or like O dot products dot like append or something, or like O dot products, we can't instantiate it like O dot products is equal to some new product, right? So this in term, what it does is it kind of encapsulates the aggregate root is the main like it's kind of a main object that contains the other list of the attributes, and only way to interact with these list of attributes is to interact with the object first, like the main root, aggregate root first. So the same is with, like, let's say a product aggregate can also be there, right? It can have like list of it can have a category, it can have like quantity, right? How many quantities are available. So if you want to modify any one of those, you need to get a hold of the products aggregate root first and then move on to their attribute, right? If you want to modify anything. So that comes under aggregates. And now in the end, we are going to discuss about bounded context. Bounded context. Now, this is going to be a little interesting. So imagine a word product that we have been referring to again and again, that we are going to address every item as a product, right? Or every object that can be sold or that can be uploaded and it's a good candidate for being sold is a product, right? Let's describe product in that way. But a product will have different meaning if the in different situations. What I mean to say is, let's say in case of uh, when customer is browsing, right? A product for that customer who is just browsing our website, it will be a list of, like, it will have that should have an image, it should have a name. So we will go like, it should have an image, it should have a name, and we should be able to, like, it should have a link to go to the, like, the detailed view of the product, right? So okay, and let's say price, right? So in this case, product to that particular customer is a section on UI. It's just a digital version of some actual product, the actual physical product that is lying somewhere. But for this particular use case, a product is image, name, and price for someone who is just browsing. Okay, I will put a line over here. Okay. Now, in the scenario when customer is browsing, now let's say when customer decides to add that product in a cart, so when added to cart, product means it should be available. The very first thing is, like, it is still the same product that the customer was trying to browse in our previous example, right? But it has very little idea, or it has very little information about whether, like, whether it can be shipped to his or her location, or like what is the quantity available and all of that. Okay, so when the product is has been added to cart, like, the meaning of product changes from just a browsable entity to something that is going to be bought, right? So it has now quantity available, right? If it contains a lot more information now, right? If it can be shipped and all of that, right? Now, when this is added to cart, now I'll put one other line here. And in case of, let's say, in case of a warehouse, right, where I was talking about the place where actual product is stored. So let's say in case of a warehouse, product is something which is kept on a shelf. That's it, right? So product is something kept on the shelf, ready to dispatch, right? Some person will come over once order has been successfully placed, right? After adding it to cart, like, the meaning of product in case of a warehouse will become an actual physical product which is kept over on a shelf, right? Now, let's say I'll come over here. We'll take one more example in a different scenario, where let's say if the customer got a uh, like a bad product, right? Some part of it was broken. In that case, product is something that is being discussed for, like, let's say, a refund, or like, it's now a conflicted thing, right? There. So what I want to say is, sorry, the same term, the same term product is seen in different ways in different context, right? So, and from here you can say that these, like, the part that I was trying to explain is, these all becomes the bounded context, right? When the customer is browsing in this part, right, product meant something different. When when it was like the cart related context, right, product means something different. When it was warehouse context, product means something different. Okay, so, and if you uh, think like this, product was a ubiquitous language. We have already discussed this, that we decided to call every item or everything that can be sold or everything that can be interacted with in like a transactional way. You can buy it, sell it, refund it, right? It can be called as a product. So in different meaning of one ubiquitous term change to different things in different bonded context. So you can say of like a bonded context to be as a special scenario or a special boundary where the meaning of ubiquitous terms are consistent within the same boundary. All the actions or all the operations that happens to that particular term, the ubiquitous term, the impact of that remains in the same boundary. Okay. What I mean by that is, let's say if the product that is in the cart over here, if it is removed from cart, it is gone, right? But it really doesn't impact the product that is sitting over in the warehouse, right? Customer can still keep browsing for that same product, even if they have like added it to onto the cart or not. It doesn't matter. The product is going to be available on the main homepage or on the screen of the UI, right? Product screen. So, like, I'll try to reiterate it once again that bonded context is a scenario. Like, it's like a, what do you call it? You are going to uh, take as much scenarios as possible, like the business scenarios, and try to include the entities, right? So in this case, product was an entity, and it was coined as product. Like that entity was termed as product using the ubiquitous language, right? Whatever we did within the bonded context, the effect of that operation remained like local to that bonded context only, right? It didn't propagate or like it didn't go to other bonded context and altered the state of that product, right? So yeah, and as you will probably now get to a point where you'll start thinking of these bonded context as microservices. So microservices are like these bonded contexts that we just talked about. They are very good contender of microservices, but before like getting them into one single piece of microservice, you might need to discuss a bit upon like, hey, are for example, let's say is warehouse and the cart functionality, are these two chatting way too much? If they are really interacting a lot, you might want to take out some of the stuff from warehouse and put it in the cart. Not really recommended, but I'm trying to give an example over here that you might the entire idea behind microservices, it should be as less chatty as possible, right? The interactions between two services should only happen when it's really needed, right? So you might decide to take some of the logic from one microservice to the other one, so that rather than for that information, rather than going to a different microservice, the microservice will like they will find it within their same database, like microservice A or B. So what I'm trying to say here is, let's say there are two microservices A and B. Now, let's say these two are like chatting a lot. And when I say chatting a lot, it means they're interacting a lot for data, right? A is trying to do something, but for that they need data from B, right? So you can discuss if they like if A and B, like the items which are there in A and B, or like the processing logic which is there in A and B, can some part of B be stored in A itself, right? So let's say some logic of I'll mention it like this. So some part of B can be taken in A, like within the bounded context of A itself, so that this interaction is like deleted, right? This interaction doesn't take place anymore. So yeah, I think like I explained bounded context, aggregates, right? So if I try to build a diagram, right? Uh, value objects, I'll try to like give you a final picture of how different concepts that we just discussed. how they are mapped in a within a diagram, right? So I can say that let's start with entity, right? Entity. Entity is composed of value objects. Okay. Now, aggregates. Let's put aggregates over here. Aggregates may have one or more entities within it, right? So we checked, right? Um, the order aggregate, it had it consisted of order, like the product entity, user entity, and stuff like that, right? So, and there was one aggregate root called as order, which contained all of these different entities, right? So aggregate will have one or more entity, right? Multiple aggregates can be there in a bounded context, right? So let's say we put it here like bounded context, right? So a lot of different aggregates which work really closely with each other, they can be termed as they can be constituted in the same bonded context, right? So one bonded context can have one or more aggregate, right? So, and this bonded context that is there, right? It can have, like, this is an ideal contender to be to be wrapped around in a microservice, to be like the entire functionalities, like this functionality can be separated out in a microservice. And two bonded contexts, let's say there was, this is V, there is a similar B dash, right? There can be another bonded context which will take care of let's say this was an order bounded context, right? So this can be like user bounded context, right? User bounded context. Order and user might be interacting with each other, right? For some information. So these, and when I'm saying bounded context, I'm trying to go towards microservice that the individual of these bonded contexts can be deployed as a separate microservice, and these two can communicate with each other. Okay. Now let me see if I have missed something. Um, Modern context, ubiquitous language, value, entity, and domain. Yeah, I think yeah, the most of the concepts are covered, and I hope that this video was little helpful in terms of understanding the concepts around domain-driven design. Uh, I admit that this is little confusing, like at first, but like when, in case if any one of this was confusing, please let me know in the comments. I'll try to explain and clear out as much as possible. In the like in the process, I'm also learning a lot, right? And I'll also learn in case like there are some really valid concerns around some of the topics, right? So I'll learn and address those. So, yeah, thanks a lot for your time. And yeah, have a good day. See you soon in another video.